Well, on this very special afternoon, we want to waste as little of Professor Schaefer's time as possible. We want to hand as much of the afternoon over to him. But there are just one or two things we would like to say. Mind you, with the weather outside, we may all spend the night here, so that would be, that would be even better, perhaps. But we would like to tell him how very much we appreciated the trust he placed in us by allowing us to listen to the tape of his last talk. Because I think many of us were so excited, so lifted up, so dazzled and stunned by the afternoon that it made a great difference to be able to listen to it again, where we found every single word had a great significance. And also, he placed his trust in us in that he told us we could send this abroad to our groups. We did assure him that they also would not type it up or make any use of it. And he very generously said on the doorstep, I know that, that's why I come here. So I would like to tell him from us all that this was most tremendously appreciated. People who didn't see any of the slides or diagrams, and I'd only like to read the sentence at the top from Australia. It is Sunday morning, and I've just heard Professor Schaefer's tape. What can I say? I am mentally jumping over the moon. And New York. We've just heard the tape of Professor Schaefer's meeting on December the 1st. What can I say? It is beyond expectation, and the thrilling possibilities and potential of realization are now beginning to unfold before us. I recall Dr. Rose saying, when we were speaking of people being moved towards unity, who is doing all this? Surely we are being carried. And those are just two places in the world that really have appreciated the tape. Now, when Professor Schaefer very kindly wrote a thank you for a thank you letter, which I think is marvelous, he indicated that he felt a little sad that Sunday afternoon that he wasn't able to finish his talk, and that he was going to try and bring everything out from above in sharp contrast to from below. That's 2 months ago. Things are moving very fast. We don't want to tie you in any way. We've had wonderful questions sent in about your last talk, but we may have more spontaneous ones tonight. But I would like to say that having listened to your tape and the last talk, we did also rather feel like watching the television perhaps at the end of an episode for Dallas. We were left absolutely on the brink, and we're looking forward very much to this afternoon. Professor Schaefer.
Yes, okay.
We also hope everything will work properly this afternoon.
Good afternoon. Some of you have come a very long way, I gather, and that's quite something. I've been given some indication of what to aim at this afternoon, and it is entirely different from other occasions. It'll be, because of that indication, this will be much more personal. Although the whole is being taped, the first section, when I shall speak a bit before questions and answers, will be particularly personal, and I may not release that for study. I'm not sure yet. The only reason, and I've been asked to think about universal consciousness, our relation to it, and what on earth, how on earth, if there is a universal consciousness, which is entirely good, do we have good and evil as well, apparently? Evil as well. Now, these are very deep questions. They've never been answered properly until recently, and we'll go on learning about them forever. This is a very personal statement, and the only reason I accepted the invitation this time, which is a very different sort of occasion, as I've said, is that Dr. Rolls made the remark towards the end, or at the end, that what he had seen or passed on to you or whatever, I'm not sure, was in some sense upside down and backwards. Now, I don't know anything about your way of thinking, or very little. I have some intuitions about it, and some of those intuitions would say, yes, it is upside down. Some of it, maybe, in my little view, the way I work. And if something is upside down and backwards, you're very noble to be pursuing what he indicated at the end. It's a very difficult one for you, and it's a very difficult one for me, because I'm not sure how you were thinking. And I do not wish to offend. I just give what I have to give as I see it. I have not asked for a fee this time, so I can say what I like. I thought you would like the other talks somewhat, so that's a different matter. This one you might not like, because it does mean, quite probably, I gather, I would suggest, I think, turning things upside down. Now, to give some little tiny run at that symbolically, these are huge questions. They need symbols or we get nowhere. I'll put the pyramid on here. Internal construction. Can everybody just about see the main features? Is there a pointer of any kind? I could use my arm, but if you have a pointer, it's better. Can everyone hear as much as they want to hear? We have the pyramid rising here to high heights. This is ground level outside, or chosen by the designers. We have a rising tunnel, enlarged into the gallery of light, or the way of truth, if you read the Book of the Dead, etc., where it's described in some detail. This is 2500 BC. And there's a lot of structure up here in the King's Chamber. We have a horizontal tunnel and chamber, the Queen's Chamber, leading off from this corner. From this corner as well, we have a shaft hurtling down, the only connection there is with this outside way, which is at the same angle down as the other is up. And we have the pit here with its dead end. We have the three levels indicated here. I cannot stop today to justify anything. If you want to ask questions, that's another matter. This has come out of my own study. I followed no one else. A lot of this has been interpreted, which I think is correctly interpreted. None of this has been interpreted, nor this. Nobody knows what to do with it. And we have three levels. The floor level there is exactly symmetric to the floor level here with respect to the ground level, which is this corner. These blocks here are granite. The rest is limestone with a granite plug there. Granite signifying eternity. This is the path in time, or the way mentally. The date of this, if you work in pyramid inches, is 1453 BC, this corner, the end of the channel with its eternal plug. You're not allowed to go any further that way. And that is exactly the time of Moses. when the first statement came, I am that I am. There are three colors here: time of David, time of the great time of the Babylonian captivity of the Hebrews, the priestly documents, Genesis and so on, the time of Buddha, time of Zoroaster, the great flowering. This is precisely the time of the birth, and at this very corner where the rise takes place sharply is precisely the year of Jesus' ascension. I'm showing you these roughly because they will point out where we are according to this great symbol in time and what we're facing in terms of the way upward. And I think you'll see how startling it is in a second. I'm missing one, but so we'll have to look at it in smaller detail. Can't see the detail here, but there is another little extension of this corner, which is the time of Paul precisely, up till his martyrdom in Rome. And this wall here is not vertical. It faces slightly that way and has 7 levels. First 2 levels correspond to Jesus' ascension, the next 5 levels to the time of Paul. We have this very great rise up in the Hall of Light at the time of Jesus and Paul. From that very Pauline corner runs off this horizontal channel, which falls down at about 1200 AD, a bit later, 1400 AD, to the level of the birth of Jesus. Generally considered that this is the level at which the church in general has halted immediately after Paul. Something stopped it at that point, and it's marked time, Queen's Chamber, at the end of it. Have we arrived in the Queen's Chamber? The center of the Queen's Chamber, vertically upward, is this great step, it's called. The largest item along the way, underfoot. Pity, I'm missing one here. And when we come up through that Hall of Light, we have this great step in the year 1844. Not ahead of us, it's well behind us. Not very long compared to 2,000 years. And this corner here is 1914, which is such a confined space you have to get on your knees to crawl at this point. We've now emerged from the end of this confined period, just a few years ago. And this is the first time in the whole route for those who are, this is the mental way, the upper spiritual way, symbolically. We have for the first time granite above us, but no granite below us yet. But within the next 12 or 14 years, we have granite below us, understanding. At which time we meet the first item in the antechamber to the King's Chamber. The King's Chamber, you recall, has a sarcophagus in it, which was empty. Man has never died. There is no body to account for. And this has on it a seal at head height. As in the book of Revelation, they were sealed in their foreheads in the latter days, the ones that have got to this point. Now, it's quite a spectacular structure we are involved with if we're on this level. Here's where I was indicating a minute ago, the empty coffer. There are 4 levels of granite, some with limestone ends, above here. And there is a way through, a rough-hewn passage, to the first level from the end of the Hall of Light at the top 7th level, where we have another wall, which is not vertical, but sloped this way. 1894 is the time of that corner, and this gradually comes down to about 1914, with 7 levels of descension. The major events are behind us. The Great Step, the end of the Hall of Light. Now, at the opposite end of the Hall of Light was the Christ Jesus and Paul corner, with precision in their dates. This end matches this end. Jesus said he would send the Comforter, the Spirit of Truth, Greek Paraclete. In the West, the Paraclete is considered masculine. In the Eastern Orthodox Church, it's considered feminine. I believe in Greek it's neuter. Very important. The Spirit of Truth, which shall lead you into all truth, which will teach you all things. That's already behind us, if that matches with this. The second coming has already taken place, in my view, within the last century, just before 1914. It was complete, and we entered into the New Age. We did not, most of us, accept it, and we were into immediate world wars and dissolution and so on. We had to suffer our way through instead of accepting it. Just as at the other end, there was virtually no acceptance as well. There's a lot of structure in the Queen's Chamber. By the way, the center of the Queen's Chamber is in perfect alignment with that step. That's 1844 as well. And there is a niche carved in the wall here in the Queen's Chamber. This one's drawn. Oh, let me put it the same way as, yes, the writing will be backwards. And there's a 7-fold structure here, 4 rising to a peak and 4 unfolding. And at both of those levels, there is access out through the pyramid and back into the King's Chamber. I've pointed out the 7-fold structures, the 4-fold structure. We'll be coming to this in many different ways, maybe. And then the unit structure, which is above the 4-fold structure, which has its own cap or crown made up of pairs of limestone. So it refers to man and not deity, but it covers the unit. And it consists in that direction into the blackboard of 12 stones each side, 12 pairs, the 24 elders around the throne. 12 is clearly there as well. Now these match together extremely well with the Book of Revelation for those who study it a lot. I think that's enough to indicate what to me are some of the main features of the history of our past and very present and immediately ahead history for those who are perceiving something spiritually. There's also the pit, of course, which is a very attractive place for most, including myself from time to time. And if the pyramid is viewed from a completely different direction, at right angles to what you've just seen, so that we're looking again at the structure of the 4 and the 1 and the empty sarcophagus here, and the Queen's Chamber, and the ground level grotto falling down into the pit. This is, I think, I've had the inspiration here provided by the writer of the new book, relatively new book, The Great Pyramid Decoded, most of whose interpretations I don't follow. But I like this one. This looks entirely like man with foot and head and crown and heart and sexual organs at ground level, which is exactly the entrance to the pit. There's great structure in the pit, which I won't look at, but is carefully matched, very exactly matched to the economic and political and particularly psychological history of man in recent times, and therefore probably just ahead. There's a huge plunge just ahead at the time when we meet the seal up above. All in the next 10 to 15 years. It's been highly accurate so far, in my view, and I suspect it will be continued to be. Somebody, some group, had deep understanding of the metaphysics of the universe, of God and man. No one knows who designed the pyramid. The Habiru came out of the east. They took over the Egyptians, designed the pyramid. 200 years it is estimated it took to design it, and then build it. I'm not pushing the pyramid particularly, but it is a marvelous teaching symbol, I believe, and I could go into many details. There are other ways of looking at it. You can look at the zodiac and so on. It teaches the same sorts of things, as long as you get away from the zodiac as a predicting method for your life. It is a prediction, but an eternal prediction, not a time one. I think that's enough of that. Now, consciousness. I think the upper hall of light and its features and its rising functions all indicate the nature of the eternal consciousness. It's known even to philosophy that, and to yourself if you've ever pondered, and everyone in this group does, that all is consciousness. There's no proof to anyone, to any individual, that there's anything else but consciousness. You're conscious that you're conscious that you're conscious that you're conscious. And to assume there's anything beyond consciousness is pure hypothesis. And that's the most obvious fact that is possible, not only to the philosopher, but to everyone who ponders and meditates. But we deviate from it the whole time. We keep on insisting that there's something outside of consciousness, which is beyond it, and we take our image for that, the image of the visual world, which of course is consciousness, a form of consciousness. Can't be anything else. We must never forget that, or we'll get it upside down. But we have an image of the visual world, and we've analyzed it to its death nearly by natural science in the West. It could only occur in the West, thanks to the arrival of Christianity, and in its early form, of course, not after the first few years when it was corrupted, and it's still corrupted utterly in its organizational forms in most cases. We've analyzed those images using instruments, which are, of course, forms of consciousness, for analyzing consciousness, but we keep forgetting that. And we believe that there's something beyond the image, which is a substance, we think, which has its laws of interaction, which are independent of us. We call it matter and its laws, electromagnetism, gravity, and so on. We've put a story together of three major forces, which which operate out beyond which is nothing but an image, but we've forgotten that. We believe more in a hypothetical substance called matter with its laws, which we believe is beyond the image and gives rise to the image through light waves, etc., which is part of the hypothesis. And so is our mother. When somebody says, "Where do I come from?" your mother says, "From me," which means another form of matter. Grandmother, apes, fish, sea, earth, stars, galaxies, Big Bang. The story gets a bit weak at this point. But it's a very long story now, thanks to Western technology. And it's extremely detailed. So we are beginning to see into the logic of it. And the logic is very stunning. We have hypothesized a thing called matter with its forces, which give rise to the image, forgetting that the image is primary, that the idea and its image is primary and is consciousness. But we now worship something which is purely hypothetical beyond it, and is therefore secondary, and we're taking it as primary. And therefore, what we arrive at has to be upside down. And as we now know from its study, as if it were so, gives rise to a picture which puts the particles, the protons, as primary, Big Bang or otherwise. These get together somehow and produce galaxies through gravitational attraction, all independent of consciousness in us. This is our story about our own consciousness. Remember, it's all consciousness, and there's nothing beyond it. We have no proof of anything beyond it. This is all hypothesis, which we now worship for thousands of years, and now in huge detail. And having made it ourselves, we now try to control it. It's full of pain, by manipulating it using the same theory, which is a very introverted way of dealing with consciousness. Oh, I won't pursue that one. Primary, we say, although it isn't, it's purely secondary. It's protons, galaxies, suns, planets, amoebae, and so on. Human bodies, which are all part of the same story, not considered part of consciousness, although obviously a body is as much part of consciousness as anything else. And so we rise, it is said, let me put it the other way around, so we rise from protons, physics, to life, or bioforms, to psychoforms. This funny body we have hypothesized suddenly has a brain in it, which somehow has some consciousness in it, instead of it in consciousness. So we have brain and things like that. And man seems to have evolved. This is evolution. It isn't really, it's the other way around, it's devolution. And we're about to see this, and you'll hear all this within the next year, I'm sure, as natural science completely collapses. The first indications are, I was amazed to hear it's actually here already. Last weekend, I hear, last Monday or Tuesday, on the Horizon program. Most peculiar place to hear it. But Gregory from Bristol was saying we probably got it backwards. And a book has come out this week saying, is quantum theory illusion or reality? By a serious quantum physicist. And the result of this story is that this evolution has taken place by pure chance. that is fundamental. That's the discovery of this century. That this completely material picture is governed entirely by chance. I.e., there is no cause in what we thought was the cause. No cause whatsoever. And yet somehow it seems to hold together. Well, it's a form of consciousness, of course. And what we haven't tackled is what is the nature of mind or consciousness which gives rise to its own evolution, or not evolution, to its own unfoldment. We've ended up with a chance picture which is there and is considered by all honest scientists and philosophers, maybe 1%, as meaningless. If they all thought it was meaningless, they'd soon be out of work. The government would catch on and close down. Sell it off. I'm not kidding. It will be sold off, but literally by closing down as soon as this is realized. It's not far now. In the next few years, we're reaching near the end. The end. What a time to live. The end of the intellectual adventure of looking for the source where there is no source. That is to say, treating the secondary as primary. Treating the secondary, which it may be, as primary. This is the big upside down. No wonder there are opposites involved. Everything in this entire story consists of opposites, and almost all ancient religions are full of opposites, yin and yang and so on. Everybody gets excited. That is to say, the New Age people who are being stirred because of all this activity that's going on from above now, stirring the individual. People are having experiences they've never dreamt of within this story, which has come at them through their schools and their homes and so on for a long time now. And they're perplexed. They're called New Age people. They don't know where to look. They think, well, the West has failed, so they go East. This is a very personal statement. It takes about 10 years to come back from the East and start looking in the West again. And that's beginning to happen more and more. The story that is got in general, when you look into the mystical side, corresponding to all this, is there is a mystical side, mystical psychology, which I believe is identical to this. And we'll see the nature of this more in a few moments, how defunct the whole thing is. And New Age people are so excited about marvelous opposites which will be balanced. It is impossible to balance opposites and have a stable system. We know from mathematics, logic, dynamics, every way of looking at it. It is impossible. Even the solar system, which is a balance, of course, of opposites. The sun pulling in, the planet trying to rush away under swirling motion. Looks damn stable. It's been around for a few 100 million years in this kind of orbit. But it can be proven that it's unstable, and the Earth will depart from the sun. It may depart, of course, tomorrow. There is no guarantee whatsoever. We only need the smallest of perturbations of a passing comet of notable size, or a passing asteroid of sufficient size to pull the Earth just that little bit more and it's gone. And that can be proven mathematically from the laws of Newton. There is nothing stable whatsoever in the concept of balancing of opposites. It is pure illusion, but it is so attractive to the New Age person who's never thought about life until recently, because of the breakthrough coming from above. Thank God, at this stage in history. For some reason, we're being trained on this platform for something else. And We may listen and grow, or we may not. All is consciousness. There are two sides to consciousness, it seems, the subjective and the objective. And what I've just said is that we're treating the objective as primary, worshipping it, and arriving at a meaningless, chanceful evolution into more meaninglessness and instability. There's no hope. My kingdom is not of this world. Christianity is so dead in its most of its forms, other than New Testament, that it's not helping at all. But we shall have to rediscover what was discovered then, clearly indicated in the pyramid, and now completed by the other, because of the dates at the other end of the Hall of Light, completed already 100 years ago. We seem to have missed it, but it's around. The Comforter is around. The Paraclete, the Spirit of truth that will lead you into all knowledge, is around. What else do you think is happening to account for the stirrings which led to this afternoon, for example? There is no sense of love or affection or any other spiritual quality in the entire picture of the worship of the secondary as primary. Where is love? Where is affection? The intellect, the masculine, so-called masculine intellect, has won completely. Took over in the Greeks, with a few chaps deciding they were really gods, and the rest were slaves, and there were a few women around without souls. But their ideas were so powerfully attractive to the intellect that they have carried on. They reburst out in Neoplatonism, which corrupted Christianity and gave rise to the Trinitarian idea, which is enshrined in the creeds, no evidence of which is in the Bible. And we have Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, all masculine. What the hell? Where's the balance of manhood and womanhood in our basic theory of the universe? So that we have, in addition to knowing, we have also caring in equal amounts. Then there might be balance. Not balance, then there might be completion. There is completion. What on earth holds, well, I won't go into that. We know, and I've emphasized this in the last lecture, I think, we all know that the power of hypnotic suggestion. We can be stunned by it in 3 seconds on a platform, quite stunned. We might even accept it and be stung individually. The power of suggestion is nearly all-powerful. We are surrounded by suggestions 99.9% of the day, particularly from the media and from chat at work, which is all foul suggestion. There's no indication of completion of manhood and womanhood. We are dominated by the people trying to save this and make money out of it and control it. Yes, we have to be grateful, and we can sit here today in warmth and in half-decent clothing, and that is a great step forward. But now we're coming to see what the implications of the whole thing is in the last few years of the system. Suggestion is all powerful, and we have mutual suggestions which we have accepted. People have an idea, usually turned down by others, but sooner or later there's a powerful person who has an idea, he or she convinces a few others, it then sweeps the populace in the next 30 years or so, and you actually start seeing and feeling it. That is suggestion at work on a grand scale, which I call consensus. And we have formed our secondary as primary universe out of consensus. There's nothing else to it. It is pure illusion. But it's very, very strong illusion, because we all agree to it. God has disappeared from all this because matter is doing it all. He's disappeared so far behind the Big Bang and in every other way that he's considered unknown. Almost all religions on earth consider God unknowable. Greeks certainly do. As a clear example, the cloud of unknowing. The black cloud at the top of their pyramid. The unknowable God, which St. Paul objected to on Mars Hill when he spoke to the Athenians. The philosophers on Mars Hill. And he said, as I passed by and held your devotions, I found an altar with this inscription. And in the King James Version, this is in capital letters, to the unknown God. Whom therefore ye ignorantly worship, him declare I unto you. Here is the new message. In him we live and move and have our being. In him. This whole picture says that he's out there beyond and unknown. He's disappeared from the scene, he or it. In him we live. How upside down and inside out. In him. How do we live in him? To me, God is complete consciousness. God is the only mind there is. And our consciousness is related intimately with it. Our consciousness is the consciousness of God in action. We are witness, conscious witness, to the unfolding, perpetual and eternal unfolding of the only mind there is. All is consciousness, there's no doubt about that. No one can object to that if they stop and think and get rid of this stupid consensus that we've all agreed to, which is falling in, caving in around us. Yes, some religions say there is only one. All is a unit, one. The all is the one. But they get stuck there because they also have at the other end of their picture a material sense of things which involves truth and error, good and evil. And somehow the all, the only mind, which they would insist upon as omniscient and omnipotent and omnipresent, and the good, somehow, therefore, if omnipresent and omniscient and so on, and good, somehow yet allows for a material man and a material universe full of good and evil, truth and error, and so on. Dis-ease and ease, or harmony. How do you account for the error, apparently, and the dis-ease, apparently? Well, there are many versions of this, none of them satisfying to anyone I know. People are always complaining to me that they can't understand when they look into it. I mean, they blindly accept it for years, but they may well one day look into it. And then they see that they cannot understand the explanation being offered for this apparent duality when there should be a unity. Plato said his God was exactly like that, but he accepted matter and the material universe. He's therefore completely caught. And he has to account for it somehow. And he says, well, God saw that there was a little problem down below, but he didn't make it. And he created a lesser God to go and care for it. But he still made that lesser God who knew about it, so he does know about it in that case, and therefore the omniscient good is responsible for the evil, and we're stuck. And so we are with all these simple religions of the past. There's a possibility of moving forward once you have a Trinitarian or a compound God, because the belief could then arise that you could split that compound up. But while you have a unit God, a God which has no distinguishable parts, which is the true of all the ancient religions, then you have no way of accounting, even in belief, because somehow or other, out of the undifferentiated, somehow a belief has to arrive, at least the belief has to arrive that it can be cut up. But how is that possible? Mars Hill, marvelous. We'll come back to the unknown God in a second. Compare this as an alternative to the unknown God. This is life eternal, says Jesus. Is, not shall be. And then he defines everlasting life. Not shall be. And then he defines everlasting life as a present knowledge of his Father and of himself. This is life eternal, that they might know thee, the only true God. That they might know thee, not conjecture about the unknown God through the intellect, and arrive at this kind of stuff. Matter is the unknown God. It might well be the unknown God. If God is unknown, and God is force and creator and so on, then you can consider one candidate for the unknown God is matter. Well, that's ridiculous. It's as if there is one universal consciousness. I think everyone would agree to that. Love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and so on. Which all religions have as a statement in one form or another. But Christianity has one more commandment, a second commandment give I unto thee. Love thy neighbor as thyself. Here's an ethical element coming in. The insistence on loving neighbor, which could of course include the universe, the animals and the elements of the universe, the stars of the universe, all of which need help. Remember the flea? Well, if it applies to the flea, it would apply to a star which is being born and is out of control and is about to explode. Remember, all that is in consciousness. It can't be anywhere else. And therefore, man's consciousness is bigger than it. There's no doubt that our consciousness is bigger than the universe. The universe exists in our consciousness. But our consciousness is not made by us. We think it is. We think we have free will. As Einstein once said to some philosopher who was persuading him that there's free will, Einstein wouldn't have the notion of free will, and I don't. We seem to have it before any action. If you look back, of course, then it looks like everything was determined. But he said, yes, free will. Well, but what about the will to will, the free will? There you're stuck. What is the will that controls will? Is it God's will, the one universal consciousness? Or have we considered ourselves as creators or co-creators, a very common phrase in the New Age? Man is co-creator with God. In my view, absolute rubbish. If we consider ourselves creator or co-creator, then we're operating outside the consciousness of God. And all will be black. The night sky will be full of stars, pinholes, instead of ablaze with divine light, the light of consciousness. When we are out, taking the position that we are outside God and therefore outside consciousness and therefore in body and matter, which we do 99% of the day, I would dare say, such is our education for thousands of years. then we are involved in this, and God becomes the unknown, and the only way of knowing that God is through conjecture, and that's natural science and philosophy, which has been rife and has misled mankind with some advantages, of course, temporary advantages, as I say, nice clothing and warmth. But we have got to the end of that now. And I've indicated how close to the end, not only through the pyramid, but in my last lecture, in relation to a new logic which has come forward. I might skip that logic. It's very elementary, and I've learned a lot since I last talked to you about that logic and how it relates to the divine logic. I believe there's a logic of the divine mind, the universal consciousness. It's a compound mind. It has to be compounded, a compound unit. It's not undifferentiated. It is as differentiated as it is possible to be. It's infinitely differentiated into an infinitude of ideas already existing. And each individual is a viewpoint, a witness, a conscious witness to those ideas. From their own perspective, it's a different combination for every individual. But every individual consciousness has to be in harmony because it's looking at the only compound idea, which is the divine mind. And those ideas are related and ordered by the most profound logic, well beyond our contemplation, except for the Paraclete, the Spirit of Truth, the Comforter, which has come and given us a small view, showing us that through eternity we shall have a complete view, but only through eternity, because it is an infinitude of ideas, all perfectly related. There are no opposites. They're all in harmony. It's the exact opposite and upside down of something which is said to be the balance of opposites, such as Brahmanism, such as Jewish. I won't mention them. They're all about the same. They're all masculine. They've missed the feminine. The great symbol of the feminine, according to the Comforter, is already spelled out in the Bible, in the book of Revelation. Years after Jesus departed, he appeared in a vision to St. John. And John wrote down 22 chapters of that vision. The central feature in the central chapter, in the central verse of the entire structure, which is always, the whole Bible is symmetrically arranged. Every book of the Bible is symmetrically arranged. Has at its central verse the profound image for us, which we are now beginning to understand at this late date, but not too late. Behold, there appeared a great wonder in heaven. A woman clothed with the sun, and the moon under her feet. This is the moon, all this matter business. The secondary is taken as primary. The universe is secondary, is under her feet, is responding to whatever this archetype stands for. And this woman clothed with the sun had upon her head a crown of 12 stars. It's even echoed in the pyramid. And she being with child, this is a creative symbol. At long last we have a creative symbol instead of this damn masculine trinity. I mean damn only masculine trinity. We have the sense of completeness coming here into our symbols. And she, being with child, cried, travailing in birth and pain to be delivered, and there appeared another wonder in heaven. And behold, a great red dragon. having 7 heads and 10 horns, and so on. And she brought forth a man-child, who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. This is a symbol. This has got nothing to do with a man appearing on earth. The second coming has nothing to do with a man appearing on earth. The second coming was said to be the Spirit of truth, which will lead you into all truth. The Spirit of truth. She brought forth a man-child who was to rule all nations, and her child was caught up unto God and to his throne, returned immediately to source. There's a reflection going on here. The universal consciousness gives birth to ideas. Well, the ideas are there, but they are born to individual consciousness as a child. But they are returned immediately to the source. So there is a self-reflection, continuous self-reflection in this universal consciousness. Second day, all this is spelled out in chapter 1 of Genesis. Nothing to do with Adam and Eve. The most profound statement in the Old Testament. Delivered to the priestly, the so-called priestly document, Jews in captivity, to the great prophets, Ezekiel and so on, Zechariah, Nehemiah. 7 days of creation. Nothing to do with this junk, which has no meaning and is full of chance. This is a mental creation, that is to say, revelation. All consciousness occurs by revelation. There is no creation out of nothing. It's a revelation of that which is there. But it's ordered, and it's ordered in a precision way, in a sevenfold way. Everything is ordered in a sevenfold way, as confirmed later in the book of Revelation, of course, and I think, by the Comforter, which is here with us. And the second stage of the ordering, which is instantaneous ordering, of course, doesn't take time. There's no time about it. It's an ordering. It's not a tic-tac-toe, tick-tick business. Time. This is time. Matter moving around is time. Moon going around Earth is time. Cycles, periods, curses, measurement. And this divine mind unfolds itself to itself. What else can it do? And the evidence of it is its own consciousness, which is man. Man is the witness to the unfolding of the divine mind to itself. And the second day has a firmament in it which allows the reflection, the mirror of glass in the book of Revelation, to reflect back to the source. Jesus says, "Of myself I can do nothing." Man is not a creator. He's a reflector, a witness, an image and likeness of that which is. The only activity there is, the infinite mind unfolding itself to itself perpetually in the most glorious, harmonious set of completely specified and detailed forms, more detailed than we've ever seen with our eyes, full of glory and power and honor. Second day has the firmament to divide the waters above from the waters below. This is the reflection, and the reflection through man is back to God. Of myself I can do nothing. Whatsoever the Son seeth the Father do, that doeth the Son likewise. The reflection, the Old Testament. Delivered to the priestly, the so-called priestly document, Jews in captivity, to the great prophets, Ezekiel and so on, Zechariah, Nehemiah. A statement that really could be used. Whatsoever the Son seeth the Father do, that doeth the Son likewise. Man is not a creator. He is a reflector. He is a witness. He is an image and likeness. Subjective and objective is one. Subjective as God's idea. Objective witness to the universe, which is the immediate understanding of that idea. so man has dominion over the universe, as promised in the book in Genesis 1. Well, I think I've probably said enough. I think this could be summarized by the story of the prodigal son who says to his father, "Give me of mine inheritance that I may go into a far-off country." Free will, man is greater. I'll do my thing. I'll be my own ego. I won't have you as my ego. There is only one ego, of course. The one mind, the universal mind, which is love, whose main characteristic is love. The principle of that mind is love and life and truth. Not just truth, not just knowledge. That's a stupid masculine one-sidedness which dominates all at the present time. Unless truth is seen as equivalent to love, we're finished. And we have a few years to learn it, and no more. Prodigal said, "Give me of mine inheritance, that I may go into a far-off land outside your kingdom, Father, to do my own thing." Didn't take him long with his riotous living, it says, until he was reduced to working in a pig farm, got paid virtually nothing, and he was pleading in the end to eat the husks of the ears of the wheat which the pigs were being fed. And he was forbidden to have even the husks. And then he came to himself. As to say, he noticed within his own consciousness that the Father was there. Because as soon as he came to himself, the Father was there. Came running to meet him and said, "All that I have is thine." All of the universal consciousness is ours by reflection. And that is very practical. I'll stop there. Thank you.
First of all, I must thank you for your courage. Yes. Tremendous courage to come here and speak to us in such terms about things that have obviously been ideas that have been working away in you for so long, and yet, for the most part, if I may hazard a guess, just about no one to say them to.
Never before.
Yeah. Well, in that case, and we are deeply flattered
the odd
and honored.
friend, but that's it.
Yes. Now, I think every now and then, like everyone else, but probably like many people in this room, every now and then I was saying to myself, "Nonsense, stop it." I don't agree with that. But I think I would speak for the whole room, and everyone here, and everyone connected with our society, if I said that we are at one with you on the thought of the one consciousness. This is, you may not appreciate or know the way by which we have come to this thought or realization, but of course we can naturally tell you more about that. But that is the point at which we stand, not so much through your long, hard road through the study of the sciences, but through the help that we have received from our teachers and the way in which we have been constantly forced to say, no, it isn't that. No, we're on the wrong track. No, we've got to think again. And you see, what we are faced with now is that we have come to this conclusion. Sometimes we have seen it emotionally as well as intellectually, fleetingly. But the great question that now faces our society, on which our future depends, probably, how do we make it practical? How do we make it imbue our hearts, our heads, and what we do with our hands? Can I be selfish and make that in the first question to you? Because this is a theme that comes up in many of the questions that people have sent in. What is the most practical thing that we can do in relation to this great idea?
If you thoroughly accept the coherence of the omnipotent goodness of a God that is love and life as well as truth, if you thoroughly accept that, you have to reject as completely unreal and nothing any suggestion of its opposite. And by immersing oneself even for a second, when one has immersed oneself for even a second into such a coherent view, not in a misty way, but in a calculational way, almost, in a logos manner, and you've accepted the coherence and the unity and the goodness and the love of one universal consciousness, self-reflecting with you as its witness, then you will discover that you have no problem anymore. And it works every time, as long as you can get into that, even for a second. Because it has eliminated the other suggestions, which looked absolutely real. Dis-ease, it's removed dis-ease, and given a completely confident nature of ease, harmony, and you will not witness anymore dis-ease. In the specific case that gave rise to your requirement for something practical on that occasion. And that is the case. And I can just say that's happened hundreds of times to me. I'm not ill very often, but it's happened hundreds of times in terms of human relationships and working out financial problems at the office and so on. If this source is the only source, and it is as bountiful as the father which ran to meet the son that wanted nothing but the husks even. He was so receptive by this stage and offered him the fatted calf. Such a father will not leave you penniless. If you turn to that source as the only coherent source of abundance, you will be supplied up to the necessary level for that moment. If that means you need a lot of assistance because it involves a lot of people, you will have lots of whatever is required. If it's a widow's mite, that's marvelous. It's whatever the individual needs. It's so fitted to the need. As long as the source is accepted as the only source, and you are not a source or creator, and there is only one source, And that source must be entirely good, because if it had any opposites built into it, it would not be eternal. The thing would never have ceased, and we all believe this is an eternal thing, and to have existed eternally already and forever means it has not one iota of opposite built into it. Any such a thought is a pure belief or suggestion which can be erased completely by immersing into such a coherent picture, which fills out more and more as it is turned to more and more, because it is infinite and ever present. We don't turn to it very often, and so we grow very slowly. But the whole of it is available this minute, right now. Now is eternal life.
Yes.
They might know thee. That's my view. And it works in practice when applied. That's my experience.
Yes, you referred, Bill, to the universal consciousness being something common to our view, but also this whole idea of reflection, I would say, is very much the basis of our approach.
Reflect for 1 second,
Reflect,
put
yes.
it that way,
Yes.
and you will be whole.
Yes. Be still. You have to be still to reflect.
The ego must depart.
Yes.
The false ego must depart, and the real ego, the only ego there is, must be acknowledged. And that is reflection, the image and likeness. In my view.
Now, it would be nice to have questions from the floor, don't you think now?
Yes.
And I'll draw perhaps on some of the questions here, but I think while what we've heard is very new, I think there must be a lot of fresh thoughts and inquiries in people's minds. Can we have something? Miss Bolton.
The first response, when one becomes aware of this glory, which is, don't you think the first response should be enjoyment of it and entering into it and then living it, or trying to live, but going into it? As soon as there's an awareness of all this glory and this goodness, and that is reality, then the first response surely is a sort of thankful reaching out to it and a rest in the thankfulness.
Alice Bolton says that when the moment of experience of this full glory, shouldn't one's first response be to enjoy it, to give thankfully rest in it, or to enjoy it?
Yes, that's the return back to the source. You've acknowledged the source. And so the source is self-reflecting and needs man to reflect back. Man is the reflection. And the gratitude is the return to the source for what you've just received. The reception is being yourself, the image of God, and seeing that.
Yes, you said be yourself, which is very pertinent here, where it was suggested you should be yourself, but to be yourself you first have to come out of what you are not.
Absolutely, and that is eliminated. Yourself is the only ego there is. An awareness of the only ego is yourself.
Now, yes, Mrs. Farrell.
Very practical, really. Would you say that the minute one comes up against an ego clash with a situation or a person, that the practical thing to do instantly is to transfer one's identification from one's ego to the universal ego of consciousness, so one really is looking at it from his or the whole view. And it's a simple movement, one could catch it.
Mrs. Hoare says, when you have a clash of ego in a situation or with an individual, isn't the very first thing to immediately look to the universal ego? pull yourself away from the very second you catch it.
To feel yourself to be that big thing, that wholeness, is hurt one's own.
To feel oneself to be that wholeness instead of this small.
In the universal mind, or in the divine mind, there cannot be a clash of ego because there is only one ego. And the fact that there seems to be a clash of ego means that you have taken yourself apart in belief from the one consciousness and decided to have your own. And therefore, you will admit that everybody else has the same right, and then you end up with a billion possible clashings. And the way to overcome that illusion and erase it forever is to take the viewpoint of the one ego. Try to think out, by listening, from the divine, which is your only mind, which is your mind, which is the only mind. And if it's your mind, it's every individual's mind, and therefore there's no clash. And that takes courage, maybe, because you might not believe it. But if you are confident about that, then you will not be, it is impossible then to be aware of a clash. And lo and behold, Esau was seen coming, rushing up and embracing Jacob after his night of struggle on entirely this very point. Jacob was fearing Esau because he saw Esau as another individual that was going to hack him up or whatever for having apparently taken his birthright and everything else. And he struggled with this angel thought all night. He tried to hold on to the angel thought. Not the other way around. The angel wasn't wrestling with him. He was trying to hold the angel thought until he saw that it says in the Bible, and this is one of the key archetypal symbols of exactly this situation. It is the only one, I think, the key one in the Bible, that when he saw Esau, he saw Esau as if he were the face of God. And the face of God is one. There aren't a billion faces of God. And seeing Esau as also an image and likeness meant there was no separation and there was no clash whatsoever. And lo and behold, everything was healed. That enormous threat of this jealousy and envy and so on evaporated. Never did exist, except through the dishonesty earlier carried on by trying to be his own ego, which can't be.
I'd like to read your question now, which is from Jocelyn Rose. Has the breakthrough in your own understanding of the unity between divine Logos and the Logos buried within mathematical physics given you insights about how to present this discovered reality to ordinary people, preoccupied with the problems of living and surviving, so that they can wake up and see the implications of this breakthrough and understanding? That inner and outer are one, whether for the planet, for mankind, or for themselves.
That's big enough. I think we've already had two good examples of the offered at least as examples of the practicality of this in relation to disease or some other questions, some other apparent problems over here. And we've had another example discussed just now. And this is, in both cases, the mode of action, the mode of meditation. I would prefer the word prayer. The mode of prayer was indicated. It's the same kind of prayer in every case, to withdraw the ego and witness the central and only ego and act and be its activity. Now, so we've had examples of already discussed. How to put this across is a very, very difficult question. Not because it is a difficult, answer. But it is so far removed today, thanks to our marvelous educational system and our upbringing in our families, frequently, that we don't even have the language used in the media. Wow. If it were left to humans to devise this and promulgate it, I think it would be hopeless. But the Christ, the radiation, the woman clothed with the sun, the radiation of the source, a communication of the source which gives birth to the idea of man, is in action. That's why we're sitting here this afternoon, and other groups as well, and so on. And thank God for that. It's even indicated in the pyramid, if you're interested. I mean, this granite above our head at this moment. It is present. In fact, it's ever present, not just at this time in history. Now, this is life eternal. Now that Christ communication is reaching every individual at all times. Whether they're listening is another matter. And either suffering from events will cause them to get on their knees and listen, and that's the tough way. Or, and there might be some help offered by individuals here in a new language, a new tongue, which is available. In my view, we've been discussing a bit of it this afternoon. To possibly, but there again, it's coming from an individual, and so it has no authority. I think I'll have to stick with the Christ. That's the only hope.
Good enough.
Yes.
Now, another question.
Yes.
Dr. Rose often used to speak of what he called a peak experience. And he used to say that none of us would be here unless we had those peak experiences. And he often used to say to us that we needed to make these peak experiences more frequent. Have you come across any solution to that? Because this is, I'm sure, an urgent question for all of us now.
Brian Newell reminds us that Dr. Rose often mentioned peak experiences and said that none of us, not a single person in this room, would be here if in fact they hadn't had this experience. And that we ought to make, Dr. Rose had indicated, they should be more frequent or central and to our life. And Brian Newell says, has Professor Schaefer anything to say on this?
I could say quite a bit. I'll just say, I don't know what to say. I think I know what you mean by a peak experience, and I had my first one at age 7, from which I've never recovered.
That was very late.
I'm a late developer. And it was the sense of the infinite, and there's no end to that one. And my grandmother always insisted to me, she's the one that got me into this. Glenn, until you understand the infinite, you don't understand anything. She'll never forget that. Which has been the most marvelous goad in my life. Means I am always open. Peak experience. When you've had a few peak experiences, and everyone here, I presume, has had some, then you can expect more. You do expect more. I believe, I trust and I know from experience a little bit, that you can have a peak experience whenever you wish it. But you've got just to, well, Jesus said, to enter thy closet and close the door. And when thou art in secret, pray to thy Father which art in heaven, and so on. Pray. Listen. God is Word. Listen, and you will hear as Word. That's the way we receive it at the moment. And the coherence in the flood of coherence is always there. If you have confidence, it's always there, and it should be the test of your prayer or meditation that it should happen on every occasion. So much so that the occasion of your closet would be a bus, or walking along the street, or whatever, gradually rising in frequency until it becomes continuous, presumably, eternally. It's a matter only of shutting off this stupid sense of being a separate ego and creator, and having, this is easy to say, sufficient humility to be a reflector, to be a transparent reflector, and wishing to be a reflector which blesses all, you and all, because you are reflecting the only source. It's a matter of confidence. It should happen on every occasion. If it isn't, you're not listening enough. That's all I can say. And when I listen, I have it.
So, you were going to ask the question.
Oh, yes. Taking a period of history, I think one, there is always war abundant somewhere, almost always. The world leaders start talking, and when the tension gets highest, instead of a war somewhere, they have a world war. Now, should we recognize that war is in the mind of mankind and surfaces punctuate this high level of mankind?
To what?
And let each one of us let peace abide in our hearts and forever.
Don Walters says that all through history there always seems to be war, a war somewhere. And periodically the top leaders get together and then we have a world war. Could you say that this concept of war is in man's mind?
In the mind of mankind.
In the mind of mankind. Now I missed the next little bit that you said, which was rather important. Before you said if we could have peace in our hearts and love for each other, but the linking part I missed. I didn't hear what you said.
I'm trying to remember the war, that part of the actual war and the horrors, were in the mind of mankind,
Yes.
not in the mind of individuals, although they may tap them about it.
Yes. Yes.
We should let peace reside deep down in our hearts and forever.
Yes.
Not to punctuate what's going on with one drop and talk to another.
Yes. Don Walters suggests that war is in the mind of mankind, not in individuals, but we should let peace reside in our hearts.
Yes. Divine mind, divine love, cannot know anything of warfare. That's a very bold, brave statement. But it must be so, and one day we shall see it perpetually as so. The mind of mankind is another concept. Mankind, a kind of man, nothing to do with God's man. Mankind, to me, is a collection of individuals who are doing their own ego thing. And that collection is a kind of man. It's not God's man, not the reflection, the image and likeness of God. It cannot be. God cannot know warfare. It must be pure belief, held in consensus by individuals who believe themselves to have individual egos and can do their own willing and pushing, therefore obviously clashing. And there will always be tensions and clashings as long as there is a kind of man in a physical universe. My kingdom is not of this world. This universe, this broken down image of a universe will cease to exist when we are fully witnessing to the only mind there really is. One would offer as a concept another mind, but it's only a concept in belief. There's only one mind, and that is the generic summation of all human minds, which are individual human beliefs of ego, which is not reality, but belief of reality, prodigal son ideas, generically put together, seem to have a combined mind. We don't have our own ideas. Our ideas arrive either from the universal mind, the only mind, or from a belief system through suggestion. A kind, the mind, what you might call the mind of mankind, which I call mortal mind. It doesn't exist. It's not real, except in belief. And that belief of a general, combined set of minds which will always be at war with each other will come to an end as we individually rise